Hi, everybody. Today is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
I thought, started the new year. I thought your New Year's resolution was to get rid of me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get started, Larry, with what has happened in the United States. Here is the picture of these suspects. These three. The first one is that one that has he
Shamsuddin Jabbar.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he's connected to the I don't know ISIS, Al Qaeda, somewhere, and the other two. What's going on, Larry? They're talking about all of them were going to. They went to Fort Bragg. How do you find it right now? What's the connection between these suspects?
Yeah. The fact that Shamsuddin is a former member of the U.S. Army, but the guy was a human resources officer and a IT guy, so he wasn't a combat infantryman. He wasn't trained extensively with weaponry. And he was not in the kinds of units like at the John Fitzgerald Kennedy School, where the Green Berets, special operations folks, are trained. He wasn't special operations at all. Whereas that Matthew Liverskill, I think is his name, he was special forces. He had a Green Beret. So just the fact that they had both been at Fort Bragg at some point doesn't mean that they were eating in the same mess hall. Not at all. They were different parts of the base. Very, very unlikely that they came into contact. That's number one. The other guy, Ruth, is the one who was caught with a rifle trying to shoot at Trump at the
The guy
West
in the
Palm.
middle.
Yeah, the guy in the middle, the pink shirt. The fact that he was on Fort Bragg is sort of odd because he's not military. And to get on if you're a contractor, like I was a contractor, but I had a badge that got me onto the base. So just the fact that he was getting onto the base, it does raise some suspicion about who was he dealing with, what was going on. I think the real nexus here involves Ukraine, because Mr. Pink Shirt and then Matt here, who we're seeing with his Slava Ukraine shirt, both had fairly significant ties to Ukraine in different facets. Matt, it turns out, and I'm going off of the press reports. Some of the press reports say that he is currently stationed at Panzer Kaisern. So Kaisern, that base is right outside of Stuttgart, just a little bit south and east of the village of town of Sindelfingen. I've spent a lot of time there over the years because that's the headquarters for both European Command and for Africa Command, AFRICOM and EUCOM. And so Panzer Kaisern, it was actually a panzer base in World War II that the U.S. forces captured and said, "Oh, we're going to keep this." So we, kept it for 80 years. But he was apparently involved with drone operations and was providing direct support into Ukraine. So the thing we have to look at here is, and the FBI said, "Oh, they're not connected. Nothing to see here. Move along." I don't believe the FBI if they said the sun was rising in the east. I'd have to check it out for myself. The FBI is no longer worthy of any trust whatsoever, in my view. They are a discredited political, partisan organization and have engaged in pure partisan politics and have abandoned the commitment to actually being blind when it comes to serving justice. They got always one eye open, seeing who do they have to please. They've covered up evidence in the past over the last 8 years, suppressed evidence, manufactured evidence, lied about things. So, they're saying, yeah, there's no connection between these two guys. How do they know? They haven't had enough time to establish that. What we do know is that between Jabbar in New Orleans and Matthew in Colorado Springs, they both use the same app to rent cars. People say, that's just a coincidence. Yeah, maybe it is. But I'm not a big believer in coincidence. Particularly when the two people wind up carrying out acts of violence within 6 hours of each other, 8 hours of each other. Again, this sudden transformation of Jabbar from, meek, mild IT tech working in the U.S. Army. And remember, he got out of the U.S. Army after 10 years, served in the reserves, but he didn't have a retirement package. And apparently he also was trying to work as a realtor and was not too successful at that. I don't know what switch flipped in his brain. But you also got to ask, where was he getting his money from? He supposedly was not doing well financially, yet he goes out and rents a electric truck and then drives. He says, okay, I'm moving from Houston to New Orleans. There's a lot that's not clear here, because they said, well, he's born and raised and lived in Houston, but then they show this apartment, and that's sort of another story. The one reporter who gets access to that apartment to focus on his Islamic roots she is a committed American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee supporter, pure Zionist. She's the only one that gets access to it? Nothing strange there. No, nobody's trying to use the media to manipulate public opinion. Nothing like that at all. Look, here's ISIS. This guy's got a black flag. Yeah, they hung it upside down so he couldn't read Arabic. Meanwhile, 2 weeks prior, the United States says, oh, that al-Jilani, that guy currently involved with Syria. Yeah, he was number 2 in ISIS, and he set up al-Nusra, and he's been the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham for the last 7 years. And we got a $10 million reward on his head because he's been cutting heads off of people. He's a good guy. He's our man. I mean, at some point, somebody's got to throw the flag on all this bullshit. Excuse my language. But it's like, well, which is it? Is ISIS our friend today? Where the CIA has used them. They've sent money to them, whether directly or indirectly. They provided training, whether directly or indirectly. And then yet we want to claim that they're our diehard enemy. Now, I personally believe that ISIS is a real threat that ought to be dealt with. And that the true believers in ISIS are brokering no compromise with anybody. They're not ones to sit down and say, hey, let's talk, let's sing a kumbaya, let's get along. So what you're looking at here is we're trying to give us a narrative to go by. No connection here whatsoever. If you ask me, I think that this guy out in Colorado Springs, the Green Beret, it has something to do with Ukraine. And he may have been put up to it by Ukrainians. I cannot rule that out, nor should we rule that out. Now, here's the really odd thing. This Shamsuddin Jabbar, this guy had no training in explosives, minimal training with firearms, just by virtue of his MOS, what his career was in the Army. And yet he builds 2 pretty sophisticated improvised explosive devices. I call them sophisticated because he sets them around and they're going to be remotely detonated. Some people say, oh, I can go on the internet, I can do that. Nonsense. The ones who say that are going to be, they'll be like that congressman out of Florida, Brian Mast, who was an explosive ordnance disposal officer in the Army and blew off his legs through his own incompetence and failure to follow good protocol. And then here's this Green Beret guy. Now, he is trained with weapons, a variety of pistols, rifles, shotguns, and explosives. And over his career, over that 18 years, you guarantee he knows how to build some sophisticated bombs. And he's got fireworks and gas cans in the back of his vehicle. And then the other thing here is they saying, oh, he shot himself before the bomb went off. How does a dead guy detonate a bomb? That's the problem. That what? He had a dead man switch? Maybe. He lit a fuse? Maybe. It was on a timer? Possible. But again, we don't have any explanation for this. So don't sit there and tell us that, yeah, he shot and killed himself before the bomb went off and the car was consumed with fire. Except they found his ID badge, which was still intact. It didn't melt. Yeah, this all makes sense. It's all so clear. And, he was a big Trump supporter, which is why he drove his Tesla filled with the things that could explode to the Trump Tower. He wanted to provide fireworks for Mr. Trump? I don't know. So yeah, I'm skeptical throughout. You gotta look at these connections, and I step back and say, we already know, without a shadow of a doubt, that on January 6th, the FBI put more than 20 undercover confidential informants into the crowd at the U.S. Capitol with instructions to create chaos, to try to provoke the crowd into violence in order to create a predicate crime so that they could go after Trump supporters. There's one video that has now surfaced of this one guy that's been arrested. And they take him into a side door of the U.S. Capitol. And when they get in there, they get him out of the handcuffs. And then he's fist bumping with one of the officers. Hey, man, we fooled them. He was one of the FBI informants. There was others. I'm sure this guy out of Arizona, was his name, Ray. He was. You could see him on. Hey, when we get to the Capitol tomorrow, let's storm it. We got to go in. And yet, when they came to time to indict people, he only got indicted belatedly after a lot of people raised issues about it. And then for him, it was just a slap on the wrist. He did no hard time in prison. So we already know that the FBI is quite willing and able to do anything, including violate the law, engage in criminal conduct to stop the presidency or to stop Donald Trump. So you asking me, am I making a wild conspiracy? No, I'm just raising, we know from past evidence that's what the FBI has done. So it's worth the question, are they trying to do it again? Because, supposedly the FBI, just right after this bomb went off on Bourbon Street, this guy, the guard ran people over, started shooting. The FBI was right on the scene immediately. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they've got all the agents up saying, hey, we're just sitting around waiting for something to do. Meanwhile, they didn't get to the suspect's house. The New York Post got to the suspect's house before they did. So, just a lot of odd, things that don't appear to add up on the surface. Need to be questioned.
Larry, it seems that the way that they're trying to connect this guy, Shamsuddin Jabbar, to ISIS and Al Qaeda, do you think do they have any sort of agenda for the Middle East?
Yeah, well, again, that's what's so strange about all this. On the one hand, the United States, with Great Britain and the Turks, were providing funding to HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. That, that organization emerged in 2017, and that was when it was first listed in the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism annual report on terrorism. And it's always been, and since from the last 7 years, it's been listed as one of the top 10 most active groups in carrying out terrorism, attacks on civilians for political purposes. And its roots, again, Al-Jawani, who's a Syrian, who's a Saudi Arabian, not a Syrian. He was a leader in al-Nusra. And al-Nusra was directly involved with the what I call the false flag chemical weapons attacks in Syria, where in 2013 the Obama administration tried to claim it was the Syrian army and Syrian government that was carrying out sarin gas attacks on the Syrian rebels. Nonsense. That was al-Nusra. They staged it to make it look like it was the Syrian government. It was al-Nusra. Who's the leader of then? Oh, yeah, that would be al-Jilani. And before that, he was a senior guy within ISIS. So, on the one hand, the United States government willingly, knowingly works with these extremists. But when it's convenient, man, we trot them out, say, oh, these are the guys we got to stop. Now, I'm not at all suggesting that the ISIS folks are a contrivance, that they're just, an artificial organization. They're not. Do they have people that are associated with ISIS, working with ISIS, that are being used as tools of the West? Yes. I think that goes without denial. You even got Jake Sullivan writing that in a cable that was released via WikiLeaks back in 2012 when he was carrying water for Hillary Clinton, citing how ISIS was with us in our fight in Syria. And, look at this. In Syria, we're fighting against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. And al-Assad, I'm not saying he was a great guy or a humanitarian, but he did try to protect the rights of the Alawites and the Christians and the Jews that were still in Syria, and as well as try to, he was not out like his father, rounding up a bunch of Sunnis and massacring them. And that's why Iran was along with Hezbollah, fighting against ISIS, because the ISIS guys viewed Shia Muslims, Druze, Alawites as apostates that had to be murdered, had to be killed, exterminated. I mean, this was a sectarian war, and they were uncompromising in that view. So this makeover, there was a TV show in the United States. I don't expect you to know it, but it was called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and it brought in 4 homosexuals to a straight guy's house to, the guy was a slob and, didn't know how to decorate and didn't know how to dress. And they'd come in and fix him all up and that's what, the United States has done a Queer Eye for the Straight Guy with Jelani. He's now wearing a Brooks Brothers suit. Very, very well manicured. You get the fingernails done. I wouldn't be surprised the guy's getting a pedicure. And saying all the right things. And, good God. Next thing you know, he's going to bring in Yoko Ono and they're going to start chanting, all we are saying is give peace a chance. It's nonsense. And so then they trot this guy out, Shamsuddin Jabbar, and he's swearing by, he's driving from Houston to New Orleans, and I am Shamsud, I am swearing bayat to Al Qaeda or to ISIS or whoever's in charge now, and I will die for you. Again, this is when you talk to his family's like going, WTF. He was normal last time we saw him, and that was 6 months ago. Who got to him? Who paid him? Questions that need to be asked. And yet the FBI said, nope, nothing to see here. We got it under control. No, he's not connected to anybody. No connections whatsoever. Yeah, it's only been 48 hours, but I'm sure we've scoured all the phones and we've gone through all the bank records and we've looked at all the financial transactions, which we haven't, but it's okay. Like I said, I don't trust the FBI at all. They've lost any prospect that they could be trusted. There's no foundation in their conduct over the last 8 years to say, oh yeah, we trust the law enforcement because they're going to do the right thing. Nonsense.
But we know that Ukrainians are connected with ISIS. They were training these people in Syria.
Yeah, at least HTS. Yeah, direct connection there. So, like I said, it would not surprise me at all that Ukraine is behind this. The intelligence service, the SBU in Ukraine, that they're behind it. That they've got some connection. Because particularly this Green Beret, livers kill, whatever. He was in Ukraine. You know, they're sort of hiding that, but it turns out he was more actively involved in Ukraine as a U.S. military officer. Now they're trying to suggest he was going to be working as, quote, a contractor. Well, that's called sheep dipping. You know, oh, you're no longer in the Army. We're working for a contractor, but he's still in the Army. So I said they can't figure out, is he active duty? Is he not active duty? Is he based at Panzer? And just outside Sindelfingen? You know, that's not a big, that's not a big base at all. That's a tiny little thing. You've got some admin buildings, a couple of barracks buildings, a nice place where people can go shop and eat. But it's not a big going concern. It's just it's a place where you stop over before you get deployed forward.
Laurie, is it going to be, because we talked about it may be connected with this to the situation in the Middle East, but how's right now, how do you find the situation with the conflict in Syria and the view of Israeli government? Do they see that they're gaining some sort of advantage over the situation in Syria?
They've done the equivalent of set their house on fire, and they got rid of their fire extinguishers the week before. Not a good situation. You remember, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago when Assad fell? Everybody, oh, this is a defeat for Russia, a major defeat for Iran. Sorry, I think that's just complete utter nonsense. For what Turkey is faced with is, they allowed HTS to take over. Well, who is HTS? It's not a group of Syrian Sunnis who said, we're mad as hell, we're not going to take it over anymore, we're going to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. We want that they've got family and tribal ties there. They don't have that because they're foreigners for the most part. Uzbekis, Turkmenis, Tajikis, Dagestanis, lots of Stanis in there, and Uyghurs, Saudis, some Egyptians. The point is, they don't give a damn about Syria. They don't care about the people or the land or the bat. Means nothing to them. And yet Turkey's not able to control them. They're the ones now in charge. And here's Jelani, a Saudi, presiding over Syria. Then to the east, Turkey's trying to, wants to pick a fight with the Kurds. And the United States is sending more troops and building up a new base. So we're gonna try to intimidate the Kurds into not the Turks into not attacking the Kurds. I don't think that's going to end well. So Turkey, instead of really being in control of the process, has now bought itself a big problem. It's sort of like the drug lord that wanted to take over a couple of apartment buildings, thinking, now I get control of those apartment buildings, I'll be able to control the neighborhood and the drug trade. All of a sudden, he gets in those apartment buildings, and man, he's got a bunch of people he can't control. Then he's got to beef up his military personnel or security personnel to try to control it. Meanwhile, Israel, Yeah, they're bombing the crap out of Syria. They're destroying all this military equipment. They don't have unlimited military force. It's a point I keep making that people got to get into the brain. Israel does not have the manpower to go in and secure and control that part of Syria at the same time that they're failing to contain the violence in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. I mean, the Hamas continues to kill, one or two Israelis a day. And then in the West Bank, up to this point, as long as the Palestinian Authority continues to conspire and collaborate with Israel, they may be able to, they won't have too much of a problem. But if that stops, Israel's got a big problem there. So, this is going to put a real stress and strain on Israeli resources. Now they're saying, oh, this is real defeat for Iran. In the past, Iran was dealing directly with Syrian military intelligence, Syrian military and the intelligence service. It was going through formal channels. Who might have had spies within the Syrian military and the Syrian intelligence community? God, let me think. Oh, that would be Mossad. So Mossad had a way to track and know what Iran was doing because you had this formal governmental structure that existed. That's gone now. Now you're left with these, what I call the historical smuggling routes. And you got families and tribes. They're going to move, they've been moving contraband, illegal stuff through there for generations. And I saw it indirectly firsthand with and it's not right in this area. It's actually on the other side, but it illustrates the point that back in 1980, when the U.S. military was planning to try to rescue the hostages in Iran, one of the sources of information was a Baluchi rug merchant in southwest Iran that was passing information, and how they passed it, it was coming in rugs. The information was wrapped up in rugs that were sent to a store in Bethesda, in Chevy Chase, Maryland, literally on the street behind me. I lived on Strathmore, and this was on Wisconsin Avenue. I mean, it was literally a block away from me. I didn't know that at the time. I only found out about it after the fact. But that's one way that this whole smuggling network works. Iran's going to be able to smuggle as much as it wants or needs into Hezbollah. And the difference is Israel's going to be blind to it now. They're not going to be able to control it, because before they had some control by virtue of owning assets inside Syrian military intelligence. It's not to say that they can't reestablish some of that, but it's going to be challenging. So when you take all that together, and with all the clashes now that are erupting between in Alawite communities, they're starting to fight back against the HTS. And the HTS folks, they don't have the kind of military depth and resources to go in and crush it like the Syrian army did when, Hafez al-Assad, Bashir's dad, went into Homs and killed like 10,000 Sunnis. HTS doesn't have that ability, but, that's going on. You've got elements of the Syrian army that were loyal to Assad that have gone into the mountains that are going to be fighting as guerrillas. And, the ones involved with the drug trade, I'm not sure, I don't know enough about who controls that money, but I guarantee you the folks with the drug trade, they're going to do whatever they can to keep the flow going, because you get those drugs out, money comes in. And the Beatles were wrong. Money can't buy you love, but man, it can buy you a lot of other things. So Syria is just a big damn mess. And the United States thought it had control over it, and it doesn't. It's really created a wild card that can explode at any moment.
Do you see any sort of chance under which the United States giving up on Kurds?
I'm shocked at you, Nima. Are you suggesting that the United States would betray people who it's promised to fight for? How dare you? I don't know. Ask the South Vietnamese. Ask the Cambodians. Ask the Hmong tribe people. When it's convenient for the United States to cut somebody loose, by God, they'll cut them loose in a heartbeat. So, just as Joe Biden promised the Ukrainians, hey man, we're with you till the end. Ukraine's not going, where are you, America? It's the end. So yeah, I could see at some point that the United States will just, like the dealer at the casino doing blackjack, when his turn's up, he goes, hands up, I'm done, goodbye, I'm out. That'll be the United States signal to the Kurds. Hey, it's been nice knowing you. We don't need your damn oil anymore. Yeah, so if I was the Kurds, I wouldn't be counting on the United States is not like a good long-term insurance policy that's going to pay off. I wouldn't trust us. Yeah. Oh, our word is our bond. Yeah, that's what you guys used to guys sell junk bonds. That's what you do. Can't be trusted.
And here comes the question: if things go that way, that the United States is just giving everything to be in the hand of Turks,
yeah,
what would that mean for Israel?
Well,
in a long run,
yeah, it's going to be basically if the Turks secure and settle the Kurdish problem as they view it, Israel's next. You've already had one of the sons of Erdogan talking about next stop Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque. Because there are those within Turkey that still view Israel, Jerusalem, as part of their empire. I mean, let's face it, the Ottomans had control of it for about 600 years. They remember that. The reality is the Turks, through the Ottoman Empire, have had control of Israel, what is now modern day Israel, far longer than any of the Jews who are there, claiming that, oh, this is our land. So, from that standpoint, yeah, the long-term prospects for Israel aren't good. And then look at Russia. Everybody says, oh, this is a major defeat for Russia. Oh, really? Number one, Russia has no more dogs in this fight. And yet, here's Al-Jilani to Russia. Oh, please stay. Don't go away. We love you. Stay. Have our base. The Turks, yeah, hey, stick around. Stay in the neighborhood. Russia's not being run out. And remember, in the week immediately after all of this, oh, the Russians are fleeing their naval base in Tartus, and they're running from the airfield. It was like, suggesting it was like the United States leaving Afghanistan. Nope. Russia's sitting back. My image of them, they're sitting in one of those recliners, where the feet kick up and the back goes down, eating popcorn, just watching this, going, this is pretty damn entertaining. We get to watch the Turks and the Kurds and the Americans and the Jews all eat themselves alive. And we don't have to worry about bleeding. Let them bleed themselves out.
it seems to me that in their mind, they want to have some sort of balance between the East and the West, and they see the United States and Israel together. On the other hand, they see maybe Turkey and Russia on the other hand.
Okay, who's they?
I'm talking about HTS, Al-Jolani.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Because the way that they're asking Russia to stay in Syria, it seems to me that they're receiving right now, I don't know, too much pressure from the United States and Israel. That's why they're asking Russia to stay in Syria.
Well, actually, I think one of the players behind the scene on this is MBS in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, because Jelani's Saudi roots. And, I think it'd be worth, I haven't done the digging in, but I guarantee that if you do some digging into who's his family, I'm sure they weren't not a bunch of people shining sandals in Riyadh. That maybe has some pedigree within Saudi Arabia, and so the Saudis, maybe from the Saudi standpoint, they see trying to create some chaos there in their interest. Now, in the past, the Wahhabi sect within Saudi Arabia has been a major funder, supporter in both the Al Qaeda and ISIS movements. Now, MBS of late, he's coming out like the metrosexual of the Muslim world, allowing scantily clad women to dance on stage in Saudi Arabia. Are you kidding me? And maybe, he's trying to modernize it and make it more Western. Now, look, the Saudis have always been playing a big game. I had an experience. It's been more than 20 years ago. I was traveling with a friend and mentor at the time, Pat Lang, and Pat had been the U.S. Defense Attaché in Saudi Arabia. He'd also served as the Defense Attaché in Yemen. He'd set up the Arabic program at West Point and taught it in the initial days. And then later was head of the Middle East division of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So a very smart guy. And we were meeting with this Saudi who is a prominent businessman. And on the outside, very, very devout Muslim and, very strict religious guy. Go to this restaurant, man. He's opening up $500 bottles of wine. Hey, drink this. Party. This is quite the revelation that they, a lot of these Saudis, once they're out of the limelight, man, they're into the hedonistic pleasures that Allah frowns upon. So as I say, they pay a lot of lip service to some of the tenets of Islam that they claim to uphold. And so, so you got some true believers within Islam and within the Saudi circles. And, if they decide to turn upon people like MBS, who the United States and the West is, sort of banked upon, and Russia to a lesser extent as well. What happens if MBS gets assassinated and that there's a genuine upheaval and this shift to the hard right in Saudi Arabia? Then all of a sudden life's going to get a lot more interesting, less like, Israel's counting on the fact that it can make a deal with MBS still. Now, over the last 6 months, MBS has said, no deal unless there's a Palestinian state. We'll see if he sticks with that. The fact that he could abandon his word, oh my God, an Arab leader who's duplicitous, how could that be?
In your opinion, does Turkey want a Palestinian state?
Let's not say what does Turkey want. What does Erdogan want? Erdogan wants to be the new Ataturk. He wants to be the new guy that brought back the Ottoman Empire. And if securing a Palestinian state gets him that status, and by God, that's what he's going to do. And if throwing the Palestinians overboard is going to get him that status, he'll do that too. He does not give a damn about the Palestinians. They can die for all his lip service. Oh, Israel's got to stop the genocide. Meanwhile, here, Israel, have some more oil. Keep up the genocide. The Palestinians mean nothing to Erdogan. Unless it serves Erdogan's own purpose in cementing his legacy as the Ataturk of the 21st century.
And the situation between Israel and Hezbollah right now, it seems that Hezbollah has given some sort of deadline to the Lebanese government. In 60 days, they're gonna deal with the Israeli behavior in the southern part of Lebanon?
Well, I'm not sure that the 60 days going forward. I thought this initial ceasefire had a 60-day limit on it, and at the end of that expiration, and that may be this week or next week when it expires. And Israel has repeatedly violated that ceasefire. Now, they've gone on the assumption that Hezbollah has been crippled and can't fight back, and that Hezbollah's line of communications in terms of support from Iran is completely broken. Again, I don't believe that. I could be wrong, but what Iran, while they relied upon Syria for both moving and storing weapons, that that was both it was a double-edged sword. That there's some good to it, but there's some danger and risk to it. And as we've talked about, the risk was, you get to the extent that the Syrians are penetrated by Israeli or U.S. or British intelligence, then the enemies of Iran know exactly what Iran's doing. So you move it, get rid of that and move it into a different chain where you're dealing with people that are less likely to be controlled by Israel, U.S., or U.K. And so then you can continue to supply the weapons, and there'll be some surprises for Israel. Point is, Israel does not have the military capability to defeat Hamas. They haven't yet, and control the West Bank, and go into southern Lebanon, and control Syria in the Golan Heights. They don't have that. They've got limited military resources.
The way that things are going in the United States, do you think that Donald Trump would be dealing with the foreign policy or mostly with the domestic policy?
Yes. One of the initial reactions to these terrorist attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas, and I'm calling the one in Vegas as well a terrorist attack. The initial reaction was, we got to tighten up our southern borders. And just go, well, wait a second. These had nothing to do with illegal immigrants. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to tighten up the southern border, but this is something different. The pressure for Trump, he's got a full plate that's loaded with both domestic and foreign. And the risk, I think the risk he faces is that he could get bogged down very quickly on the foreign side. Take the war in Ukraine as the sort of number one threat. Trump promised he'd have that done in 24 hours. Well, that's not going to happen. And Russia's not going to come rushing out saying, oh, great, Donald Trump's in. Let's negotiate with him. Let's negotiate with the guy who actually helped arm Ukraine when he was president so they could attack us. Yeah, we want to deal with him. Trump doesn't have anything to offer. The only thing Trump has to offer them is, we'll stop supplying Ukraine with weapons and we'll lift the economic sanctions. Then Russia say, okay, you're willing to do that? We got something to talk about. Barring that, I don't see Russia being of any mind to discuss anything with the United States unless those two things are on the table. And giving Russian assets back that the U.S. has stolen. And, the U.S. says, no, we're not going to do that. And Russia said, fine, we're going to go on beating the hell out of Ukraine and out of you. We're going to bleed you dry. And there's not a damn thing the United States, can do about it. So then Trump looks weak. Or Trump could get sucked in. Israel's may decide it's time to launch a strike on Iran. And then when, if they've miscalculated, which I believe they are, and Iran is able to thwart the attack and then strike back and do serious damage to Israel, Then Trump's going to be under pressure to retaliate and go after Iran, expanding a war. All of this while Iran, what is it? Today's the 3rd. So in 14 days, 2 weeks from today, Iran's going to be in Moscow with Pezeshkian and Putin signing that sort of called a mutual defense treaty. That puts a different spin on what's going to happen. So I don't see how, there's going to be a lot of temptation for Trump to get involved internationally, and yet the problems that are here in the United States, he's promised to kick off immediately with getting the border under control, starting the deportations. We'll see if he does that, and there's still a lot that could go wrong. Mike Johnson, if he's not immediately elected as Speaker, you may have trouble getting the election for Donald Trump certified in the House of Representatives. And they could end up delaying Trump's inauguration on the 20th. So we're looking at some potential for some real chaos here in the United States. It's not over at all.
And do you see that the process that Keith Kellogg is talking about would help Donald Trump in the way that they're talking about it right now? Because after all, it doesn't seem that they see the whole process as a bargaining situation for Donald Trump. But it doesn't seem to be that way in the mind of Russians.
So it's winter time, it's cold outside, and you're standing outside in the snow. All you have on is your underwear. You need to negotiate to get a pair of clothes and some shoes. But it's inside the house and you're knocking on the door. What's your leverage? How? Why would the people inside that house who are nice and warm want to open their door and haggle with you? Do you have any money? Do you have something that they need inside? That's Donald Trump's position. Trump's naked in the snow with respect to Russia. Russia does not need a single thing that the United States has to offer. However, Russia would be happy to entertain, end all of your aid to Ukraine so this fighting stops now, lift the sanctions on us, and give us our damn money back. Then we can talk. Then we're in a position we can negotiate. Okay, how do we move forward? How do we actually build a relationship of mutual respect, mutual security? But unless you're willing to do that, your Kellogg plan means nothing, meaningless. I don't, I think, frankly, if Putin went for something like that, that would actually pose a risk to Putin being able to stay in office, I think. I think the rest of the Russian establishment would say, wait a damn minute. We've been bamboozled and shaken down and deceived so many times by the West. And you're falling for it again?
Considering the situation, Larry, between Ukraine and Slovakia, Fico, in your opinion, the way that Ukraine is cutting off the Russian gas, are they seeing this as a policy of Ukrainians and Zelensky, or they really believe that it's coming from Washington? Because right now, the way that they're talking about it, seems that they're trying to say it's Ukraine that's behind this sort of behavior. But we know, after all, the Biden administration and their policy is behind all of this. How do they want to see this? How do they want to see this? I'm not talking about the reality.
Yeah. Well, cui bono, who benefits? Let's see. U.S. natural gas exporters, they benefit. But see, part of the problem there, and I'd want to go back and look at the contracts, because a lot of those contracts are done 6 to 12 months out. So it's not like you can say, okay, we're going to stop buying Russian gas today and we're going to buy U.S. gas tomorrow. Well, a lot of that gas has already been committed, unless Ukraine already made a deal a year ago or 6 months ago, so that this was planned, that this was in court, and so the odds are that this was planned and coordinated with Washington. Now, it certainly doesn't. It hurts Slovakia, to a lesser extent Austria, Hungary, but it hurts them. It will potentially benefit U.S. gas exporters, gas producers, but it's going to just devastate Europe in terms of higher prices for energy. It's a nuisance or an annoyance for Russia, but it's not a major blow. They'll figure out other ways to get gas to people. They'll just have to pay more for it. And, Russia's happy to sell it to them. This is one that really does damage to Ukraine, though. If Fico follows through and says, okay, you're cutting off our natural gas, fine. You don't get any more electricity. And Ukraine right now is dependent on electricity coming out of Slovakia because the Russians have knocked out so much of Ukraine's own ability to produce and generate electricity.
Larry, when it comes to Germany, how do you see Elon Musk's policy and the way that he's trying to influence the policymakers in Germany? It seems that he's totally supporting AfD or AfD, Alternative for Germany.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly bringing attention to AfD. But see this, what we're seeing throughout Europe is, and the way the language is, the language used to present the issue to those of us still in the United States. It's as if AfD is this big popular movement. It's not a big popular movement. It's got maybe 35% support. Now, but it's got more support than any of the others. What the reality of Germany is right now is it's a fractured society. It does not have any coherent vision. It's not unified at all. And so with that lack of unity, what you get is chaos. And the chances that they're going to, rally around AfD, you've got a big split. You've got elements on the, what we used to call the left, the Green Party, who are as much supporters of the war as some of the hard right-wing parties. This Merz character, they want to give Ukraine more missiles, and risk a war with Russia. So we've really got a confused situation in Germany, and in fact that's being reflected across Europe. That's the problem. There is no unity. You've got minority parties, which means you're not going to get any kind of decisive decisions made in the near term. And I think you have disappeared. Let's follow up on that then. I'll wait for you to show back up here. That Germany's economy was sort of a centerpiece for the European Union in terms of being a player on the international stage. And why the Green Party was so determined to destroy, let's call it Germany's energy independence. Germany had nuclear power plants. Germany, by virtue of buying cheap gas out of Russia, was able to get something of a competitive advantage by maintaining its own industrial capability and providing German workers with good jobs. And the fact that the Green Party now was so intent upon destroying the, let's call it the traditional energy sector, and moving to this fantasy Greenland, green energy construct, is that as a result of all of this, they have now dismantled their nuclear power capability. They stood aside while the United States blew up and destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline. And with that, Germany is now faced with having to buy more expensive natural gas from overseas. But who wins out of that? The United States. That's where the United States didn't have the interests of the German people or the German nation at heart in any of this. This is all about serving the interests of the United States. And Germany is learning to its detriment that it has lost out with German industries shutting down. Both BMW and Volkswagen are cutting jobs. So with all of that loss, and some of those industries are moving to the United States. So it means that Germany is becoming increasingly weak. I see that Nima is back now. I was doing a monologue here. Gee, it looks like you lost power.
Yeah, we have some sort of problem. It's a heavy rainy, situation.
Okay, well, yeah. Oh, well, while you were gone, I was saying, Nima sucks. He's a liar. No. No. Okay.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Sorry for the problem.
Oh, no, it's all right. I realized you were gone. And I said, okay, I'll do a little bit more discussion about Germany and the terrible implications for the rest of Europe. Yeah. Hey, hope you get your power back.
Thank you so much.
All right, my friend. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Later. Bye-bye.